In my online class. I teach mostly 3310 at the undergraduate level, and then at the graduate level I'm teaching, I work mostly with the educational diagnosticians, the ones that are looking for their certification as assessment specialists in the schools. I've been here at UTEP 15 years now. In my past life, I was a special ed teacher. I worked in early childhood with younger kids, and then I was just telling Andrea this morning that when I moved to El Paso, I ended up getting a job at the middle school, and I thought after going from early childhood to middle school I was crazy, and they were, I think, the years that I enjoyed the most. I always was fearful that, thinking that as long as kids were smaller than I was okay. When you get to middle school, all of a sudden half the kids are taller than you are, but I really, really enjoyed that age. But I think what's important is that no matter where you think you want to be right now, the field of education opens doors to a lot of different things. So for those of you who are in the process of seeking for a new job and trying to get, your foot in the door, and you say, I really want a second grade class, or I really want this, it's important to realize that, kids are kids and that you're going to find your way. What I think is also very important is to be very honest about what it is that you really know you're not the best at, because we all have our strengths. Some teachers are amazing working with the severe and profound population, other teachers are not, or some of us work great at the high school levels and others work better at the elementary levels. But that's why there's all that diversity there. So it's important to just be flexible and realize that kids are on a continuum of development, as we are also going on a continuum of development, and things will work out for you somehow. I've been now in El Paso for over 20 years, so it's home for myself and my family. I have a son who will most likely graduate from UNT in December, and I have a daughter, or my husband and I have a daughter that's a junior this year in high school. So I'm still, I get to experience education still, the effects of. She's at Coronado. Yeah. Oh, well. So. And she's drum major, so I'm very proud of her this year. So anyway, that's me, and I get emotional sometimes. So I'm just like, okay. Part of it is just the nerves. I have been teaching so much online that I forget what it's like to be in front of people. And last semester I taught a face-to-face class for the first time in a long time, and the first day I walked into class I felt I had never taught before. I was so nervous. I was just so like, oh my gosh. And I also realized how much things had changed with technology. Even though I had been teaching online, I forgot what it is to be, in the classroom. And so I had to change a lot of things, and that's what we're going to be doing a lot today also. You started to talk about some fears and myths that you've heard. Just round kind of, what are some, well, now they're going to be facts because some of you are out there, but what are some of the myths you've heard about going into the field of education or becoming teachers? Just, it's easy, okay. Piece of cake, right? All you are is a teacher, right? Okay, what other myths have you heard?
I have heard that they relate like children with autism that are like the movie Rain Man, that are really intelligent and they can pick like the toothpicks and everything. I mean, I have to explain every time I heard that myth at high school.
Right, okay, so the way that Hollywood portrays disabilities is not necessarily the reality. Not all kids. Some kids have some of those very specialized skills, but not all kids do. Okay, what other myths have you heard? And this can be just in general.
Just because you're an EC26 generalist major doesn't mean you're not going to have a sped student in your class.
Okay, you're never going to have I'm not a special ed teacher, I don't need to deal with those kids, right?
A dual language student.
Okay, yeah, I don't speak the language. Why would I have an English language learner in my class? Well, in El Paso, guess what? It's going to be 90% of the chances that you are going to have both, right? Okay, what other myths have you heard?
It is sad too that I heard about this, but in my campus they told us that we're just babysitting our kids. And it was like, and I showed one of my kids that she can read, and they were like, oh wow, so you're not babysitting, we're actually teaching.
Very good. Okay, yes, special ed teachers are not babysitters, okay? How about special ed teachers are not glorified classroom assistants? Because sometimes that happens too. They just think, well, it's, they're just in the back to help those students that need extra help. Okay, what other myths do you know about? Or just,
All children learn the same way.
okay. Yeah, okay, one size fits all, kind of, we're going to be able to, very good. Okay, how about some fears? Some of you are experiencing those right now, firsthand.
Well, like with me, since we have a lot of SPED students in our class, this is actually my teacher. She was a dual language teacher, and this is her first year in an EC Physics Generalist, a monolingual class. And she's never had SPED students, she's never had an inclusion class, so she's learning. And she always tells me, oh my God, if you weren't here, I don't know what I would do, because I give a lot of my attention to the SPED students. And there's 2 of us in a classroom, so she's like, if you weren't here, I don't know what I would do. And I'm thinking, when I'm a teacher and I'm gonna have this on my own, like, what do we do? Like,
Absolutely.
It's scary.
Yeah, and I wrote inclusion up there because I want to you mentioned that word, and I want to talk a little bit because maybe not, just because of the experiences that you've had. Any other fears that, think about this a little bit when you first started, for some of you, when you first started to hear about taking the Texas and the certification exams, everybody was like panicking, oh, I'll never pass them, I'll never get, and yet you've gotten to the point of being able to at least get that out of the way, right? And so some of those fears with time start coming apart. The one thing I can tell you is that it's not easy. Teaching is not easy. Politically right now, we're in a turmoil, I think, time in education where I really worry myself what is happening to our schools. I worry about special education disappearing little by little, in the sense that under the umbrella of inclusion, students with special needs are getting put in general ed classrooms without any supports. So let's talk a little bit. What does inclusion mean? What have you seen in the schools? And what does inclusion mean to you all?
One issue we're having is we've got some special needs kids in our class, and we've been told from the ESL class that we took that small group work is great because they get to practice their English, they get to help each other. But when you make a group, they've told us, and this makes sense, you don't want a very high performing and a struggling student, because this one will do the work and just give the other one the answers. You want them kind of close. But we found, like with kids who can't focus or won't do the first or second step, of course, nobody wants them in their group because and I don't know if this particular child is not an ARD, so I don't know. The mom says, oh, he's ADHD, and he does have trouble focusing. But we've got some of those, when you're making small groups, what do you do?
Right.
What do you do?
Okay. And actually, the research says that you do have to have a mix of group students. They should not be homogeneous in the sense of you don't have all the high achieving and the low, and you should have a mix. A lot of it depends on how you set up those groups. Okay? And that there's very specific tasks for each member. Right? Okay. So that if you do have a very high achieving student, you give them one particular task. Maybe they can be the note takers. And the child who needs more attention, you give them a very specific task that they have to do. So that then the group is responsible, they're accountable for each other.
Okay, so we're doing long division. First step was figure out, it's written horizontally. First step is to figure out which one goes in the house, and then we were moving decimals. So maybe what I could have done is have the distractible child say, you have to do step 1.
Right.
Because he wouldn't do a single step, and the other one's at the end, and they're supposed to compare answers, and he says, I've got nothing to compare to because you didn't do anything.
Right.
So tell him, your job is to do step 1, figure out which one goes in the house, and then you compare.
Right.
Okay.
And you tell the other kids what is going to be first. And that way you start engaging them. So that's one thing about group work. The more diverse you have in the class, it's important, but you can't just say, okay, as a group, you all go and do this. You have to give them task that they have to do so that they're accountable. And it can be like 5 minutes, you can keep going and you can say, okay, well, now you're going to do this and do that, or depending on what you're going to work with. You reward the group effort, not the correct answer necessarily. So you reward the process of getting here versus just focusing on the end product. So let's just this is more of a philosophical, but I want you to think about this, or I want to talk a little bit about it, because as I said, you've talked about inclusion, okay? And you're worried about working with students with special needs. And those of you out there, the reality is that they're going to be in your classroom somehow or another, right? Whether it's a visible disability or an invisible disability, right? When it's a visible disability, we tend to, we can understand that, and we tend to go out to them.